Tonight, across America, rest stops and parking lots have become the new retirement plan. More than thousands of seniors are settling into RVs, not for travel, but for survival. These are lifelong workers who paid into the system for 40 years, only to discover the system won't pay them back. Housing soared. Social Security didn't. One bad break and the bottom fell out.
So breaking news just moments ago, new inflation data just out, giving us another snapshot of how prices are trending, what direction they're headed for Americans.
Effort to build a better Bay Area. Tonight we're looking at a mile-long stretch of road in Marin County that has come in many ways to symbolize the Bay Area's growing housing crisis.
This is the fastest growing homeless population in the country, and it's not caused by bad luck or bad budgeting. It's caused by policy. And once you see the mechanism behind it, you'll understand why millions more are already on this path, and why almost no one is prepared for what comes next. The Social Security illusion. Let's start with the foundation that's supposed to keep seniors housed. Social Security, the safety net Americans pay into their entire working lives with the promise that it'll be there when they need it. The average Social Security retirement benefit as of late 2025 is $1,968 per month. That's what you get after working 40 years, after paying into the system every single paycheck, $1,968. Now let's talk about rent. The national median rent for a two-bedroom apartment is $1,789 per month. Do that subtraction. You have $179 left for the entire month for food, for utilities, for medication, for transportation, for everything else required to stay alive. But wait, most seniors don't even get to attempt that math because landlords require proof that you earn 3 times the monthly rent. 3 times $1,789 is $5,367 per month. You're earning $1,968. You don't qualify. The application gets rejected before you even start. So seniors turn to RV parks. They think maybe that's the solution. A place to park. 4 walls, a roof, but here's what they discover. The average RV park in America charges between $500 and $1,200 per month for a space. That sounds manageable until you realize that's just the lot rent. Electricity isn't included. Running heat in winter or air conditioning in summer adds another $200 to $400 monthly. Then add propane for cooking and supplemental heating, $50 to $80. Water refills at dump stations, $30 to $60. Generator fuel if you're not at a park with
Okay.
park with hookup, $100 to $200. You're spending $800 to $1,900 monthly to live in an RV. That's more than your entire Social Security check in many cases. And you're still homeless, still moving every few weeks because parks have time limits. Still one breakdown away from losing even this. But fixed income failure is only the beginning because for hundreds of thousands of seniors, the promises made by employers over decades of service evaporated overnight. When pensions vanished, there's a generation of Americans who were told that if they worked hard, stayed loyal to their company, put in their decades, they'd retire with a pension. That promise died. Between 2000 and 2024, over 1,400 private companies terminated their pension plans. Corporate bankruptcies, restructuring, mergers. Every time a company failed or decided pensions were too expensive, thousands of workers who'd spent 30 and 40 years building toward retirement watched those pensions get slashed or eliminated entirely. The Pension Benefit Guaranty Corporation covers some of the loss, but not all of it. A worker who was promised $3,000 monthly might get $1,800 or $1,200 or nothing if the company went under before the pension vested. James is 63. He worked for an automotive parts manufacturer in Michigan for 38 years. Assembly line, then quality control, then floor supervisor. He was 3 years from retirement with full pension when the company declared bankruptcy in 2022. His promised pension was $2,700 monthly. After the bankruptcy restructuring, he gets $984. His wife's retail job provided some income, but that store chain also closed. They had equity in their house. Not much, but $70,000 after paying off the mortgage. They tried to downsize into something smaller, but prices had doubled. The house they could afford would have consumed every dollar of equity just for the down payment, leaving them with a mortgage they couldn't pay on $984 a month. So they bought an RV, $22,000 for a used motorhome with 90,000 miles and a transmission that makes concerning noises. They parked it at a campground 2 hours from Detroit where monthly rates are $675. They thought they were being smart, preserving capital, keeping mobility, but the RV has become a money pit. The refrigerator failed, $1,600. The roof developed leaks, $800 for repairs. The generator died, $1,100 for a replacement. Every month brings a new breakdown because the vehicle is 17 years old and was never designed for full-time living. They've burned through $40,000 of their $70,000 in equity just keeping the RV functional. They have $30,000 left. James is 63. His wife is 61. They can't claim Social Security without penalties for years. That $30,000 has to last. And every time something breaks, they do the calculation. How many months do we have left before there's nothing? This pattern repeats across industries. Steel workers in Pennsylvania whose pensions vanished when mills closed. Retail employees whose companies went bankrupt owing billions in non-dice pension obligations. Airlines that dumped pension plans during restructuring. These weren't people who made bad decisions. They did exactly what they were told. Work hard, stay loyal, build toward retirement, and the system betrayed them. Now they're living in RV parks and Walmart parking lots, watching their remaining savings evaporate on vehicle repairs while they wait for Social Security that won't be enough anyway. And when the person who earned that income dies, what's left behind is an arithmetic crisis that forces surviving spouses into vehicles within months, the widow's calculation. Here's how Social Security treats the death of a spouse. If both people were receiving benefits, the survivor gets the higher of the two benefits, not both. One, the household income gets cut by 30 to 50% overnight. If a couple was living on $3,500 combined, the survivor now gets maybe $2,000. And every single expense they had as a couple still exists. Rent doesn't cut in half. Utilities don't reduce. Insurance costs the same. The survivor loses 30 to 50% of household income, while expenses drop maybe 10%. The math stops working immediately. Barbara is 68. Her husband died 14 months ago. They were living on $3,200 monthly combined Social Security. She now receives $2,040. They had been renting a one-bedroom apartment for $1,500. After he died, the landlord raised rent to $1,700. She asked if she could stay at the old rate, explained her situation, offered to sign a longer lease. The landlord said no. Market rate is market rate. She couldn't pay $1,700 on $2,040. She couldn't find anywhere cheaper that would accept someone on fixed income. She spent her husband's $10,000 life insurance policy on a used RV, a 2006 model, 32 feet. The dealer said it was highway ready. It broke down 3 times in the first 2 months. She's parked at a monthly RV site outside Albuquerque, $875 monthly. Electric averages 160, propane 70, dump fees 40. Her medication is $290 after Medicare. She's spending $1,335 before food, phone, or gas. She has $705 remaining per month. That's $23 a day for everything else. She can't afford the laundromat, so she washes clothes in a bucket. She can't afford the gym membership other RV dwellers use for showers, so she fills water jugs at gas stations and heats them on her propane stove. She avoids driving anywhere because gas is $5 a gallon and her RV gets 8 miles per gallon. She's isolated. The RV park is 7 miles from the nearest town. She has no family near.
Home is where memories begin. You don't need a lot to make memorable moments. Just time, love, and
family nearby. Her adult children live in other states and don't know how bad things are because she's too ashamed to tell them. 80% of seniors in RV homelessness are women, widows who lost household income when their husbands died. Divorced women whose Social Security is based on their ex-husband's earnings and was never enough to begin with. Women who worked part-time or left the workforce to raise children and never built substantial Social Security credits. They're the invisible casualties of a system that penalizes survivor status and assumes everyone has family to fall back on. They don't, and they're dying alone in parking lots while their Social Security checks sit in bank accounts insufficient to pull them out. But loss of a spouse isn't the only sudden crisis that destroys America's retirement security medical catastrophe before Medicare eligibility creates a 3-year death sentence. Medical bankruptcy at 62. Medicare eligibility begins at 65. Not 62, not 63, 65. If you retire early, if you lose your job, if your employer-sponsored insurance ends before you reach 65, you enter a gap where you're too young for Medicare and too old for affordable private insurance. And if something catastrophic happens during that gap, it destroys you. Cancer, heart attack, stroke, organ failure, any serious illness generates bills that run into hundreds of thousands of dollars. Insurance through the Affordable Care Act exchanges exists, but premiums for someone in their early 60s can run $1,200 to $2,000 monthly with deductibles of $8,000 to $14,000. Most people can't afford that, so they go uninsured, and when they get sick, they lose everything. Tens of thousands of Americans are living this scenario. Medical bankruptcy between 60 and 65. House sold to pay bills. RV purchased with whatever remains. Waiting for Medicare, hoping nothing else goes wrong. Dying slowly from treatable conditions because they can't afford the copays and prescriptions. This is American health care for seniors who had the misfortune of getting sick 3 years too early. Yet even those who make it to 65 without catastrophe face another trap-forced retirement before they're ready, engineered by employers who see older workers as expensive liability, forced out before retirement. Age discrimination in layoffs is systematic and invisible. When companies downsize, when they restructure, when they optimize labor costs, older workers disappear first. Not officially because of age, that's illegal, but because their positions get eliminated, because their roles get restructured into something requiring new skills, because they're expensive. A 58-year-old making $85,000 with 3 weeks vacation and full benefits costs more than a 32-year-old making $60,000. So the 58-year-old gets a severance package and a handshake, and suddenly they're unemployed with no prospects. Linda is 59. She was a senior analyst at a pharmaceutical company, made $92,000 annually. 26 years with the company, her entire adult career. In 2024, the company announced restructuring. Her department was eliminated. 14 people laid off. 11 of them were over 55. She got 12 weeks severance. She applied to over 300 positions in 8 months. She got 7 interviews, 0 offers. Every rejection email said the same thing. We've decided to move forward with other candidates. She knows what that means. She's too old. They want someone cheaper and younger. She filed for Social Security at 60, the earliest possible. That permanently reduced her benefit by 30%. She gets $1,518 monthly instead of the $2,168 she would have received at full retirement age. She'll get $650 less every single month for the rest of her life because she couldn't wait. She couldn't afford her apartment, couldn't find work, bought an RV with her retirement savings, $12,000 for a 2009 travel trailer. She's at a park in New Mexico, $695 monthly. She's trying to find remote work, but every application goes into a void. She's applying from an RV park address. She's 59. Companies see both things and reject her. She's trapped, too young for full retirement, too old for employment, living in a vehicle on a permanent poverty income because the labor market decided she was finished 5 years before she was ready. This is the reality for hundreds of thousands of Americans between 55 and 67, forced into early Social Security because employment stopped being possible, locked into permanently reduced benefits because they couldn't survive long enough to wait, living in RVs because reduced Social Security doesn't cover rent, searching for work nobody will give them because age discrimination is unprovable and universal. They're a permanent underclass created by the intersection of ageism and insufficient retirement policy. And they're growing, but even those who plan retirement carefully find themselves betrayed because the places marketed as affordable havens became traps when housing costs detonated. The Sun Belt betrayal. For decades, seniors were told to retire to the Sun Belt, Florida, Arizona, Texas, Nevada, warm weather, no
You okay, Dad?
Yeah, 1 sec. Lift.
Dad!
no state income tax, affordable housing. Golf courses and retirement communities marketed as paradise for people on fixed incomes. Millions believed it. They sold houses in expensive states and moved south, expecting to stretch their retirement dollars. What they found was a housing market that exploded beneath them. Florida's median home price increased 73% between 2020 and 2024. Arizona was up 67%. Texas, 58%. Rent prices matched the surge. A one-bedroom apartment in Phoenix that cost $950 in 2020 was $1,580 by 2024. In Tampa, $1,200 became $1,900. Retirees on fixed incomes watched housing costs rise 40 to 70%, while their Social Security increased 8% total over 4 years. Then came the insurance crisis. Florida homeowners insurance became impossible. Companies fled the state. The ones that remained raised premiums 300 to 500%. Homeowners paying $1,800 annually saw bills jump to $7,000. Many couldn't get coverage at all, so they sold, took whatever equity remained, moved into RVs because it was the only option that preserved any assets. But RV parks in Florida are at capacity. Waiting lists stretch 8 to 12 months, and summer in Florida is lethal without air conditioning. Seniors living in RVs in Tampa in July faced temperatures of 115 inside the vehicle. Running air conditioning constantly costs $400 to $600 monthly in electricity alone. If you're dry camping to save money, you're running generators at 5 gallons per day. That's $700 a month in fuel. There is no cheap option. You're choosing between different expensive ways to not die of heat stroke. Arizona has the same problem with different details. Phoenix hit 115 degrees for 31 consecutive days last summer. Inside an RV without air conditioning, temperatures reach 135. That's lethal within hours. Seniors are paying everything they have to run cooling systems powerful enough to keep them alive. Some can't afford it. They die. Their bodies are found in parking lots and rest stops. Heat stroke, dehydration, cardiac arrest. The medical examiner rules it natural causes. Nobody counts it as what it actually is. Economic homicide. Seniors who moved to warm climates for affordable retirement and got priced into death instead. Yet those facing deadly heat at least have the mercy of surviving winter. For seniors trapped in northern climates, cold becomes a months-long execution. Winter's lethal equation. RVs are not built for winter. They're designed for recreational use, 3-season camping, maybe 4-season if you're careful and don't go anywhere too cold. They are absolutely not designed for people living full-time through winters in Montana, Minnesota, Colorado, or Wyoming, where temperatures hit 0 or below for weeks at a time. But thousands of seniors have no choice. They can't afford to migrate south for winter. They can't afford to relocate permanently, so they stay. And winter tries to kill them. The propane consumption is staggering. A standard 30-pound propane tank lasts 3 to 5 days when you are running a furnace constantly in sub-zero weather. That's 6 to 10 tanks per month. At $25 to $35 per tank, you're spending $250 to $350 monthly just on heating. Furnace can't keep up when it's negative 20 outside. You're supplementing with electric space heaters if you have hookups, or portable propane heaters if you don't. Those portable heaters burn through 1-pound bottles at $4 to $6 each, multiple per day. Your heating bill hits $400 to $500 monthly, and that's if nothing goes wrong. What goes wrong constantly is frozen pipes. Water lines freeze, waste tanks freeze, pipes burst. Repairs run $500 to $2,000 depending on damage. Seniors living in RVs in Colorado during winter wrap everything in heat tape. Insulate underneath. Bank snow around the RV for insulation. None of it fully worked because the vehicles weren't designed for this. Then there's carbon monoxide. Portable propane heaters produce carbon monoxide. So do furnaces if they malfunction. RVs are small enclosed spaces with minimal ventilation in winter. Every year, seniors die from carbon monoxide poisoning quietly in their sleep in parking lots and campgrounds. Found weeks later when someone finally checks. Margaret was 71. Living in a travel trailer outside Billings, Montana. Divorced, small Social Security, couldn't afford rent, stayed in the trailer through winter because she had nowhere else to go, used a portable propane heater because the furnace had broken and she couldn't afford repair. Temperatures dropped to negative 18 in January. They found her 3 weeks later. Carbon monoxide poisoning, she'd suffocated in her sleep while the heater ran. The medical examiner ruled it accidental death. Nobody asked why.
The biggest pushback that I get as the owner of an all queer and trans identifying mental health practice is people sliding into my DMs who are
Nobody asked why a 71-year-old woman was living in a trailer in Montana in January. Nobody investigated why the system failed so catastrophically that freezing to death or suffocating were her only options. They just closed the case and moved on. Hundreds of seniors die this way every winter in vehicles, from cold, from carbon monoxide, from house fires when makeshift heating solutions ignite. The actual number is unknown because nobody tracks it systematically. They're categorized as natural causes or accidents, but they're neither. They're homicides. Systemic failures that put elderly people in vehicles in climates that kill them and then act surprised when they die. Tonight, 146,150 Americans over the age of 55 are sleeping in RVs. Not because they chose this lifestyle, not because they're adventurous retirees exploring the country, but because every safety net failed, because Social Security doesn't cover rent, because pensions vanished, because spouses died and survivor benefits weren't enough, because they got sick before Medicare, because employers discarded them 5 years too early, because they believed the lie about affordable Sunbelt retirement, because winter doesn't care if you can't afford heat. This population is projected to triple by 2030. That's 450,000 seniors living in vehicles within 5 years. The math is clear. The trajectory is locked. Housing costs keep rising. Social Security adjustments don't match inflation. Savings are depleted. Medical costs accelerate. More people turn 65 every day with insufficient retirement resources. They'll buy RVs because RVs preserve mobility and dignity longer than street homelessness. And then they'll discover what today's RV homeless already know, that living in a vehicle on fixed income is just slower death. The solutions exist. Expand affordable senior housing, increase Social Security to match actual cost of living, create designated RV sanctuary sites with services, enforce age discrimination laws, fix healthcare gaps before Medicare, but implementation requires acknowledging the problem, treating senior RV homelessness as housing crisis, not personal failure, recognizing that a country allowing elderly people to freeze or bake in parking lots has failed fundamentally. If this opened your eyes, go back and watch our previous video, the one where I follow the people already living this reality inside their RVs. It'll change the way you see retirement in this country, and make sure you subscribe. What's coming next is even more important.
What if I can build an